Hey, sports fans, Greg Medford from Medford Knife, MKT USA. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. I've been sitting back a little bit, waiting to see, taking a little pause, a little regroup, just get my bearings a little bit. I've had my friends who are ready to man the revolution. I had them all hit me up for my thoughts. So I thought I would wrap it up today. I thought I would give you my 2 cents. I haven't said much about what's going on, but I'm going to give you my take on the moment. We've known for hundreds of years through experience that elections will always be fraudulent if there's not a person standing up and putting their mark for their vote. We've known this for hundreds of years. We've known it really for thousands of years. And the attempt by people to make voting easier and less personal and less in person and less distant and less verifiable is an attempt, they hide behind it's an attempt for equity and the racial intimidation, except it's not 1950. There's no intimidation of black people going on to not go to the polls. Come on. There's no intimidation of Hispanics to not go to the polls. Come on. It's not 1950 and they're still having that argument like it's the Jim Crow South. Come on. I need to use my driver's license to buy a beer or cigarettes, yet you don't have to do anything to vote? It's insane. The attempt for porosity in the voting is an attempt for corruption. And then the beginning of ballot stuffing and harvesting of votes happens, and all elections go amok. Was the election stolen? Yes. Was it stolen kind of fair and square? Yep. We didn't fight hard enough. Donald Trump lost the election. You know why he lost it? He lost it because of the press. He lost it because the press didn't like him. He lost it because he tweeted and talked directly to us people, us heathens out here in the provinces. He lost because he was a little rough around the edges and the establishment didn't like it and the press really didn't like it. Here's a question. Why did the press dislike him so much? Why? You know why? It's because he was everything they're not. He was successful, most of them are not. He was hardworking, most of them are not. He was the opposite of intellectual, which is doer. Intellectual doesn't mean smart. Intellectual means wrapped up in heady masturbation. And he was the opposite of that, as so many of us are. We must keep in mind that intellectual means the realm of ideas. And the opposite of that is not dumb. It's the realm of reality, the realm of application, the realm of day-to-day. Donald Trump represented the Enlightenment, the period by which Western civilization left burning witches at the stake and thoughts that the earth was the center of the universe, and we began to look outward beyond ourselves to see where we fit into the universe, and empiricism became the rule of the day. Donald Trump represented empiricism. Economics. Economics is the study of human behavior. And Donald Trump was the master of human behavior. And on the other side of the aisle, we have people who've lost touch with reality. The great Harvard economist Thomas Sowell said, when intellect is uncoupled from practicality and reason and empiricism, no wisdom is found. Where intellect is connected to experience, great wisdom can be found. And this is what confounds intellectuals. They think being intellectual is an end in and of itself, and it is not. Intellectualism is mental masturbation, and it's a failure if we can't bring empiricism an experience to bear to make the world a better place. And intellectualism has become uncoupled. And intellectualism, my friends say, how can they believe this? How can they think this? How can this be happening? Because professors have been telling kids their fantasies are more important than the real world. Their theories are fact, yet unproven. What happens when a young person goes off and spends between $60,000 and $200,000 going in debt at the very beginning of their life, where money matters the most in the long run? What happens when they spend a couple $100,000 or $50,000 or $80,000 going in debt chasing some degree? What happens is nobody wants to get out and say it was a waste. I don't believe it. Well, that sure was uninspiring. There's, oh, I'm somebody now. I got my degree. They told me I'm somebody. It's a negative feedback loop. A bunch of people who don't have to be coupled to economics, whose very existence is underwritten by the federal government's funding and securitizing of college debt, have made it so kids can borrow money for a car that won't ever go fast enough, called a college degree, and be in debt at the beginning of their life. And no matter what they do, they'll never be able to expunge the debt. That's a valid argument of Democrats. Their answer is we all pay for it for free. My answer is we stop that dumb shit. Let the market work it out. Kids and parents won't go into debt if communication degrees from yippity-doo-dah university don't pay off. Now, actions speak louder than words. So let's take a look at the first day and a half of our president, Joe Biden. I almost throw up just saying it, folks. I almost vomit just saying it. I get sick thinking about a man as our president for whom we don't know what he believes. We have not heard him vetted. We have not heard him defend himself. We have not heard him queried, questioned, or picked apart in the way that is required to pick someone of character to run our nation. We don't know what his intentions are. Guys like me hope for the best. We pray for the best. We say, my God, I hope he's a centrist that hid in liberal clothes. And he says he wants to rule us all. Well, let's review a couple of things from his first day. First thing he thought was a great idea was to pause foreclosures for 90 days and pause evictions for 90 days. So that people who own buildings and people who own apartment buildings have to make their mortgage payments, but they're not able to collect their rent from their tenants. What this effectually does, folks, is it allows politicians to do silly totalitarian things like shutdowns, mask mandates, and closures. It allows them to do that, yet they can kick the can down the road for the financial repercussions. Because when you shut shit down, stuff starts failing. And if you make it against the law to fail, we just woke up in Red China. Let's move on. Critical race training. That was one of his second most important things. He thought on his first day he'd come right out of the gate with critical race theory by, I forget the guy's name, Professor Bell from Harvard, who came up with critical race theory. Critical race theory, for those of you who don't know, it is a Marxist-based doctrine that it's a theory that pits everyone against one another, and it lies in connecting the ups and downs and ebbs and flows and the goods and bads of humanity, and it connects them to a victim and a victimizer. And it puts us all into two camps to split us up, and it tells black people and people of color and women and gay people that they've been oppressed by people higher up the pecking order. Therefore, they're victims. And what every good Leninist, Marxist, Stalinist, Maoist needs is an oppressed class by which a bourgeois upper class ruling party can step in. And what can they do? They can identify the problem and rescue you. I'm going to take all your power, but I'm going to save you oppressed. That's what's going on right now. Let's move on to critical race training put back in government. That was a big priority for all. Second, go after white supremacy. Now, I don't know about you guys. I've been called a white supremacist by the uninitiated, the unintelligent, and the unthoughtful with their mediocre vocabulary. I've been called, and their unread faith-based arguments from their airhead professors who've never had to actually work. I don't know too many white supremacists, but I know lots of racists. As a matter of fact, every human being I've ever met is a racist. They have bias and they have prejudice. Varying degrees of them, all mixed up, swirling around inside of us. You know, there's an old saying, if your girlfriend or boyfriend accuses you of cheating all the time, they need to take a look in the mirror because they're up to no good and you ought to look at them real close. That's what we need to look at, all these folks who tell us we're racists. We need to look at them and say, that's called projection. Dr. Freud and Dr. Jung told us all about projection. Pot calling the kettle black. That's one of the most important things, going after white supremacy. I currently have not seen in my entire life white supremacy. Maybe I've seen some privilege, I'm not sure. I've frankly been too fucking busy working. Moving on. Oh, interesting thing about critical race theory is that if you question its existence, the structural zeitgeist of the theory posits that you're a racist. You can't even discuss it. Moving on. They're going to undo the Keystone Pipeline. So now we live in a country where a company or a person, and this extends to the individual, and you must be careful. You can get your permit to go fishing, and while you're fishing, the government can come up and say, you have no permit. Where are your papers? These are no good anymore. We now live in a country where if you have a pilot's license, like I do, the government can decide willy-nilly to revoke your pilot's license for no cause, just because it thinks beating up the air is bad. We live in a country where all things free, which have now been codified and licensed, can now be taken away at any moment. You need a license. You need a permit to do a pipeline. A company spools up billions of dollars, hires thousands of workers. They go to Wall Street. They get investment capital. All of us get in on it and we chip in on it because energy independence cuts us off from the madness of the Middle East. For 8 years, it was tied up by the Obama administration. They didn't have a permit. They didn't get a permit. They got one with Donald Trump. Magically, they spool up the money. It's a profitable venture. It's good for our ally and candidate. It's good for us to be off of Middle Eastern oil. It is a great thing for America, but it feels yummy in the tummy for you greenies and the girls who vote. Oh, it's good for the environment. Oil bad. Oil bad, environment good. Environment is good. Oil has nothing is free. There's a trade-off for everything. But having lots of oil and energy independence keeps our sons and daughters out of war. You know what I learned about liberals this year and Democrats? I learned they're really happy to have a riot in your town, but if they have one on their street, they shit themselves and call the police. So, here we go. Moving on. Undoing the Keystone Pipeline. First and second day in office, that's the thing. They're saying it's 10,000 jobs and a multi-billion-dollar hit to the economy, and that's what he's going to do while forbidding people from foreclosing. Does anyone see the crisis coming? Moving on. Stop building the wall. For my corporate buddies who want illegal employees doing cheap labor for them nationwide. Good plan. Good plan. I live in a border state, and I talk to Mexicans all the time about politics. And they're very, very pro-legal immigration and they don't understand why there's even a discussion about the wall. As a matter of fact, what I found fascinating was after 7 months of the Democrats in the House of Representatives under Donald Trump fingering chocolate paintings with their own feces on the wall, when they finally delivered a COVID relief bill for $600 for Americans. I'll talk about that in a moment. It had money in it for a foreign country to build a border wall. The hypocrisy of the modern liberal runs to the marrow of their bones. They're liars and idiots, one and all. I could go into the details, but why? Let's just pause for a moment. I'm going to relay an anecdote from something that happened recently. I talked to one of my good friends, and he said, well, thank God that Trump is out of there. And I talked to him about issues. And as we started talking about issues, I noticed he came down on the side of Trump on every issue, but didn't like Orange Bad Man because Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper told him he was bad. The other thing was funny. He said the COVID relief bill, he was mad at Congress about the COVID relief bill. I go, so you totally agree with Trump? He wanted $2,000 for every American. Still not enough, but it was a relief bill. He wanted a one-page $2,000 per American relief bill. He's like, that should have happened. I go, that was Donald Trump. He goes, the House of Representatives, your Democrat-controlled legislative body, what they came up with, 1,500 pages and nothing for Americans. In-fucking-sane. Anybody else think it's crazy besides me? Now, I'm taking a risk speaking my mind because I want to talk to you, my fellow Americans. I feel like we should be able to sensibly argue. We should be able to debate. We should be able to be wrong. Now, it just so happens I'm not wrong about this. Without being shut off, without being our companies being punished. Moving on. Stop building the wall is one of his accomplishments in the first 2 days. Next. Stop restricted travel from terrorist states. So why not be able to come here from the Horn of Africa and from Syria? I mean, I can't prattle off the list of restricted countries because I'm not in them. It doesn't affect me directly. But does anyone see a pattern here? We want to constrain our domestic oil flow, which gets us embedded with Middle Easterners that are batshit crazy, having been there. We want to free up travel from places where we know terrorists make their way into the country. After 8 years of administration that led to the rise of ISIS and 4 years of Orange Bad Man who crushed ISIS. And you haven't heard a bark of terrorism in 4 years. Nothing. And that's one of his first moves is open up the borders. Our Americans have to stay in their houses, and you better wear masks if you come on federal land. But boy, I'll be golly if we're going to stop Syrian terrorists from coming in the United States. I get it, Joe. There's a big hit for you. Moving on from there. Re-enter the Paris Climate Accord. Now, for those of you, most of us haven't done a deep dive. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty succinctly. And this is something you can relate to the women in your life who, when this kind of chatter goes on, usually they check out and it stresses them and they can't fix it. And I just want to make sure the kids are okay and get them off to school and make sure nobody gets COVID and make sure the dinner's cooked on time. Paris Climate Accord. First world nations like the United States, primarily the United States, Germany and China and Russia agree to pay an offset for carbon emissions of developing countries. These are the same countries who year after year failed to pay their NATO dues and failed to pay their fair share of their own national defense. And they've angled us because of the popular greeny feel-good moment of Hollywood and mindless, thoughtless liberals who don't understand energy and science with their liberal arts and their communications and their public policy degrees, who don't know an electron, they don't know a neutron from a proton, they don't know how energy is transferred from one place to another, they don't even know what the phrase or term entropy means. These are the same people who are lawyers oftentimes. They're leaders oftentimes. They're super educated and super dumb in so many ways. The Paris Climate Accord, it was a racketeering gangster agreement for the developing countries to pay for the carbon emissions for the developed countries to pay for the carbon emissions of developing countries. Because we know they don't have enough money to offset their carbon emissions. You have to pay for them. That's wealth redistribution. That is unfair. That is American tax dollars that have gone to the public coffers for the good of our nation. And that's why, and it's what they use the excuse of taxes for on us. It is using that fund, that general fund, to help us Americans and what we have to take care of here. The elderly, the sick, the infirm, the most vulnerable, and our national defense. And it's taking that money to subsidize developing countries. And the partnerships we have in the Paris Climate Accord, now that we're back in it, are countries who have a track record 100% of not paying their fair share, not paying their bills and spinning it on us. Guess who's going to pay the bills? The American taxpayer. That's the Paris Climate Accord. It's a tax trade for carbon emissions. And we are the payers. Trillions of dollars and millions of jobs. Guaranteed. No debate. It's good for the environment. It's going to save the world. And it's not. It doesn't slow emissions. It doesn't stop emissions. Of all the countries in it, guess who's had the greatest decline in carbon emissions? Guess. The United States of America for the last 4 years. For the last 4 years, the good 93% agreement, Americans want clean air and clean water, and we demand it from our industry. And for the last 4 years, we've had the greatest decline in carbon emissions of any developed modern country. Okay? Education. Being educated on the topic. An electorate, a purchasing public who demands it from their manufacturers and producers, has more effect on greenhouse emissions than any three-card Monte shell game shit show made up by the ding-dong intellectuals uncoupled from all empiricism that run every shitbag country, including ours, the shitbags in Washington, on Earth. Innovation, creativity, and desire of the consumer. That's what gets it done. Quick pause so our sponsor can come in and give an opinion. Donald Trump went in to fight the swamp. And sometimes you go swamping and sometimes the swamp gets you. The swamp got him. And we let it happen on our watch. And we let the press do it. Moving back to our regularly scheduled program now. Mask requirements. That was one of his other ones. A national mask mandate. Now, I haven't worn a mask in 9 months. I had COVID in June. I'll talk to you about this. We can debate this till the cows come home. Bottom line is, if I ever see anybody out without a mask on, we're like two retards in an airport hugging each other. I go, hey man, another rebel. They go, love you man. I go, love you too man. And then usually one of them yells like Trump 2020 or something like that. But everybody, I'm down here in apparently a Democrat state, Arizona. I don't know what happened. I'm down here in a very freedom-loving state with a bunch of gun-toting lunatics, and everybody's got their mask on. Everybody. My kids are terrified to go out with me because I don't wear a mask. Everybody terrified about the mask. And I'm just ignoring people. I just don't even wear it. And if they push me, I go get the manager. Manager calls, I go call the police. Why would you be such an asshole, Greg? Why can't you just go along with it? Because they're not the boss of me. It's for the public good. It's not for the public good. We've had the masks on, and the goddamn virus is exploding and mutating. Wake up, everybody. Masks, funny. Masks, control. Masks, hide facial expressions. Make us anonymous. Just like the masters want. They want us anonymously, doing nothing. And you know who supports it? And this, ladies and gentlemen, this is the rub. And we've now reached, this is where in a movie, we see our character transform, called character arc, and we see the plot we see the twist. Here it is. The four great capitalist institutions of America: Apple, Facebook, YouTube, Google, Amazon. And I guess YouTube and Google are synonymous under Alphabet. And Amazon. What do these four companies have in common? They have near 100% market penetration. Everybody knows about them, and everybody who needs them uses them. They're ubiquitous. They are everywhere. Well, if you're a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 18-year-old company who happens to be one of the biggest companies in the world all of a sudden, you have a young, probably somewhat immature and not sure what to do leadership group, guess what they have found out in the last couple of years? We have to report to stockholders every quarter. We have to show growth that this whole thing doesn't work. How do you, if you have 100% market penetration, how do you get more growth? I'll tell you how. If you're Amazon and you're competing against Walmart, the only national chain that doesn't force you to wear a mask, by the way, if you are Amazon battling Walmart and you're Amazon battling buy local that all the lefties like, and you're Amazon battling every mom and pop and every main street in America, and you're Amazon and you want everybody to buy from you, what better than to support the shutdown of the world economy? What better thing to do than to support us all being locked up? If we're all locked up, we can't go anywhere. We can't go anywhere. We got to shop. We need stuff. Guess where we get it? Amazon. This is the boon of all time for Amazon, an online retailer whose biggest competitor is real places you can go in and buy your stuff. And they're all behind shutting everybody into their house, so they have to buy from them. Duh. Google. How does Google get more people? They don't. They got everybody. They get more usage. How do they get it? Lock us all up. That's why they're behind it. Don't talk about freedom. Delete that. We don't need everybody going back outside. Anybody else see that? Apple. How does Apple benefit from us all being shut in? Well, I can tell you because I know the metrics. 80% of all purchases online are done with a cell phone, and a big chunk of them are iPhones. I can tell because I see the data from our website and our sales and tracking sales and reading about online sales. So Apple, Google, Amazon, and how about the worst of all? The most irrelevant social media platform ever that I'm on right now. The one that a year and a half ago, we were all calling a has-been. How do you make a has-been relevant again? Lock everybody up. So you can't see your friends, you can't see your family, you can't go out drinking, you can't go chasing any tail. Guess what you do? You go on Facebook and you hit up some old girlfriends from high school, see who you can meet, maybe meet up at some rogue speakeasy breaking the law. The other thing that Biden's done is he's paused repayment of student debt. The pausing repayment of student debt, which means he's increased our taxes because we fund and underwrite all of the student debt. What you're getting ready to see for the next 4 years is a lesson in ideas uncoupled from economics. Economics holds human beings accountable. The reason so many don't like Donald Trump, he held us accountable. These have consequences, therefore we don't do them. This relationship has consequences, therefore we should change our relationship. He changed the relationship with China. He changed the paradigm in the Middle East. He changed our relationship with Israel. He was an accountable person, and he made us as a country act accountable. And when you see things that are completely uncoupled from reality, what you're seeing is the liberal mind of unaccountability at work. The bill's going to come due in all of this, folks. The bill comes due on us funding college debt that people don't pay back. The bill comes due on us allowing terrorists in. The bill comes due on us shutting off natural resources here and importing them from other places in the world where we put money and madness ensues. The bill comes due. I heard a great phrase the other day. It was called paraloga. And this is what you should keep in mind as you talk to your friends that are Democrats and liberals, because the problem is there is no talking sense to them because they have been immersed in a paraloga. A paralog, a para meaning near, loga meaning logic or thought, or true, or truth, a near truth. We would call it a lie. The lie is what the press is telling us. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Everybody I knew thought Trump was going to pull a rabbit out of his ass and stay president. I said, no, he's not. He's going to go away quietly and do his thing. Take his super hot wife and go make out with her down in Mar-a-Lago. That's what I would do. If he wanted to start a revolution, it could have happened that day on the 6th. All he would have had to do was say so. I mean, has anybody else thought that besides me? I mean, if he really wanted it, all he would have had to do was say it, and it would have happened. What scares them? He could do it right now. So be careful. Your friends are immersed in a bubble. They're immersed in a bubble of ignorance, of groupthink, and of parathought, of near thought. They're not thinking. What they do is they recite Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon and all of these people from CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream media, including Fox News now. And they repeat what they say on the news like it is fact. And it is almost never fact. It is almost always spin. I challenge each of you to think of a moment in your life where you've been involved in an incident and you read about it or heard about it in the news afterwards. I've been around airplane crashes and people dying and seen it on the nightly news and seen their take on it. Almost always wrong. Substantively, factually, and in context, they get it very wrong. We have to be very careful of anything these folks do that insulates them from the repercussions of their decisions. Freezing debt, freezing economic action that creates balance. We have to look very closely. All right, you guys, that's my rant for the day. I'm frankly, I'm not hopeful at all. I very much hope that the president, I hope that he checks off some boxes of people he feels like he owes in the old form of doing business, and then I hope he gets around to doing the American business. I was reading an interesting story today. It said Americans agree on 70% of issues. Well, then why not just focus your action in those 70% and a couple things out in that rare area that nobody agrees on and make America a winning place at every turn? Why not that? It seems to me a man or woman can still be president of the country and lead and do good things for the entire country for all of us that we can mostly agree on. It seems like we should still be able to do that. And it seems everyone's lost touch with that. I don't know. So, to better days. Greg Medford from Medford Knife. MKT USA. I'll let you know about my new company in the coming months. Talk to you soon. I'm out.